My wife dumped me for my best friend and took our savings, but she had no idea what I had planned. The morning light filtered through our bedroom curtains, painting golden streaks across Melissa's sleeping face. I watched her for a moment, her chest rising and falling with each breath, her dark hair splayed across the pillow like spilled ink. 7 years of marriage, and sometimes I still couldn't believe she had chosen me. "You're staring again," she murmured without opening her eyes, the corner of her mouth curling into a smile. "Can you blame me?" I leaned over and kissed her forehead before sliding out of bed. "I've got an early meeting. I'll make coffee." Our apartment wasn't much, a 2-bedroom in a decent part of town that still strained our budget, but it was ours. Photos of our life together adorned the walls. Our college graduation, our wedding day, vacations with friends. In nearly every one of them, Derek stood beside us, his arms slung around my shoulder, that same crooked grin on his face. Derek and I had been inseparable since 3rd grade when he defended me from playground bullies. We built tree houses together, learned to drive together, been each other's best man. He was the brother I never had. At least, that's what I thought. I stood in the kitchen, watching the coffee drip into the pot, my mind already drifting to the code I needed to finish today. My official job as an IT specialist for Murphy and Associates paid the bills, barely. It was steady but soul-crushing work, troubleshooting network issues and setting up workstations for executives who could barely figure out how to turn on their computers. But that wasn't where my passion lay. Every night after Melissa fell asleep, I'd slip out of bed and set up at our dining table, my laptop glowing in the darkness as I built something I truly believed in. Novamind, I called it, an AI platform that could revolutionize how businesses processed and utilized data. 3 years of late nights, weekends, and holidays had gone into it. 3 years of telling Melissa I was just catching up on work, or helping a friend with a project. I wanted to surprise her. I wanted to see her face when I could finally say, "We don't have to worry about money anymore." I wanted to give her the life she deserved: travel, a house with a yard, maybe even the family we've been putting off because we couldn't afford it yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, "Still on for beers tonight?" "I've got big news." I hesitated before typing back, "Sure." "The usual spot at 8? Derek had been acting strange lately. More secretive. More questions about my work schedule, about when I'd be home late. A prickle of unease had been growing in the back of my mind, but I'd dismissed it as paranoia. Derek was my best friend. He'd never betray me. Melissa padded into the kitchen, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind. "Morning, handsome." I turned and handed her a mug of coffee, exactly how she liked it, 1 sugar, splash of almond milk. "Morning, beautiful." She took a sip and glanced at my laptop, which I'd left open on the counter. I quickly closed it before she could see the lines of code. "Working already?" Her eyebrow raised slightly. "Just checking email." The lie came easily now, after so many months. "Big project at work." "Always is." There was a note in her voice I couldn't quite place. Disappointment? Suspicion? "Will you be late again tonight?" "Meeting Derek for a drink after work, but I won't be too late." She nodded, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "I might go out with Anna then. Girls' night. Have fun." I kissed her cheek and grabbed my laptop bag. "Love you." "Love you too," she replied, but there was a hollowness to the words that I chose to ignore. As I drove to work, my phone buzzed again. A notification from my secret email account, the one I used for Novamind. 3 VCs had responded to my pitch deck. One of them, Horizon Capital, wanted to set up a meeting. My heart raced as I pulled into the office parking lot. This could be it. The breakthrough I'd been waiting for. I'd have to find a way to get to San Francisco for the meeting without raising suspicions. The workday dragged on endlessly. I fixed printers, updated software, and reset passwords on autopilot, my mind constantly returning to the email from Horizon Capital. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was practically vibrating with anticipation. Derek was already at our usual table when I arrived at Murphy's pub, 2 beers waiting. He stood to greet me, pulling me into a bear hug that lasted a beat too long. "Good to see you, man," he said, clapping me on the back. "Feels like forever." It had been 2 weeks. "Yeah, work's been crazy." I slid into the booth across from him. "So what's this big news?" Derek's smile widened as he leaned forward. "I'm starting my own business. E-commerce. High-end products drop-shipped from overseas manufacturers. It's going to be huge, man." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for him. Derek had jumped from job to job for years, never finding his niche. "You've been researching this for a while?" A flicker of something, guilt, crossed his face. "Yeah, you could say that. Actually, I've been getting some advice." "From who?" He took a long pull from his beer. "That's not important. What matters is I'm finally doing something with my life. Something that will pay off big time." I nodded and raised my glass. "To new ventures." We clinked bottles, and for a moment, I considered telling him about Novamind. About the meeting with Horizon Capital. But something held me back, the same instinct that had kept me from sharing it with anyone else. It wasn't ready yet. I wasn't ready yet. "How are things with Melissa?" Derek asked suddenly. "Good. Great, actually." "Really?" He tilted his head. "She seemed, I don't know, frustrated when I ran into her last week." My stomach tightened. "You saw Melissa?" "She didn't mention it. Just bumped into her at that coffee shop near your place. We chatted for a minute." He shrugged, too casually. "She was saying something about you being distant lately." Had she said that? We'd been busy, sure, but distant? I thought of the mornings she'd catch me closing my laptop quickly, the nights I slipped out of bed thinking she was asleep. The way her "I love you" had sounded that morning. "We're fine," I insisted, more to myself than to Derek. "Just busy." Derek nodded, but his eyes held a gleam I couldn't interpret. "Sure, man. Whatever you say." The conversation shifted to sports, mutual friends, safe topics. But a cold weight had settled in my chest. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on what. When I got home that night, the apartment was dark and quiet. Melissa had left a note on the fridge, "Out with Anna. Don't wait up. XO." I settled at the dining table with my laptop, trying to focus on finalizing my pitch for Horizon Capital, but my mind kept wandering. Why hadn't Melissa mentioned running into Derek? Why had she told him I was being distant? My phone buzzed with an email from Anna. "Such a fun night. We should do wine tasting more often. Tell Melissa her phone died, but I got her home safe." I frowned. Anna lived on the opposite side of town. Why would she say she got Melissa home? Unless Melissa wasn't with Anna at all. The cold weight in my chest expanded, threatening to suffocate me. I pushed it down. I was being paranoid. Melissa would never, and Derek would never. They were the 2 people I trusted most in the world. Weren't they? I worked until my eyes burned, drowning my suspicions in lines of code and business projections. By the time I crawled into bed beside Melissa's sleeping form, it was past 2 a.m. I watched the gentle rise and fall of her chest, just as I had that morning, and tried to convince myself that everything was fine. But as I drifted off to sleep, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. Nothing is as perfect as it seems. Little did I know, that voice would soon be proven right, in the most devastating way possible. Friday should have been a good day. Horizon Capital had responded enthusiastically to my pitch deck, and we'd scheduled a video call for Monday. To celebrate, I decided to leave work early and surprise Melissa with dinner and wine. I stopped at her favorite Italian place and picked up carbonara and tiramisu. I bought a bouquet of lilies, her favorite, and a bottle of that Pinot Noir she loved. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe I had been distant. Tonight was about reconnecting. The elevator ride to our apartment felt longer than usual. I shifted the bags in my arms, my stomach fluttering with anticipation. I hadn't surprised her like this in months. When I reached our door, I heard laughter from inside. Melissa's musical giggle, followed by a deeper rumble that made me freeze. Derek's laugh. I'd know it anywhere. They're just hanging out, I told myself. Friends catch up all the time. I unlocked the door as quietly as possible, some instinct telling me not to announce my presence. The laughter came from our bedroom. I set the bags down on the kitchen counter and moved through the apartment on autopilot, my body knowing something my brain refused to accept. The bedroom door was partially open. Through the gap, I could see clothes scattered across the floor. Melissa's blouse. Derek's jacket. Their bodies tangled in our sheets. Time seemed to stop. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I pushed the door open fully. Melissa saw me first, her eyes widening. She didn't scream or gasp. She just stared, like a deer caught in headlights. Derek turned more slowly, and when he saw me, his expression wasn't shock or guilt, it was annoyance at being interrupted. James! My name in Melissa's mouth sounded like a stranger's. You're home early. Obviously, I replied, my voice hollow. I looked at Derek. How long? Derek sat up, not bothering to cover himself. Does it matter? 6 months, Melissa answered, at least having the decency to pull the sheet around herself. We didn't mean for it to happen. You didn't mean to sleep with my best friend in our bed for 6 months? The words tasted like acid. You were always too distracted anyway, Derek said, reaching for his pants. Always working late, always on your laptop. What did you expect? From my wife and my best friend. Loyalty. Basic human decency. My voice remained steady, though inside I was screaming. Melissa's chin lifted defiantly. You checked out of this marriage long ago, James. You're just too wrapped up in whatever secret project you're working on to notice. The irony wasn't lost on me. The work I'd kept secret to surprise her had given them the opportunity to betray me. Get out, I said to Derek. Both of you. Get out of my house. Derek laughed. Actually, mate, we're already leaving. Miami. Warmer weather, fresh start. With what money? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Melissa and Derek exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. Our savings, Melissa said. I withdrew it yesterday. The room tilted. All of it? It's a joint account, James. I had every right. $17,000. Not a fortune, but everything I'd managed to save while secretly funding Novamind. Money I'd planned to use to get us to a better life. Check the fridge, Derek said, smirking. She left you a note and everything. I stumbled back to the kitchen in a daze. There it was, held by a magnet shaped like the Eiffel Tower, a souvenir from the Paris trip I'd surprised Melissa with for our 5th anniversary. James, Derek and I are moving to Miami to start a new chapter. I've taken our savings to cover moving expenses. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce. I'm sorry it ended this way, but we both know this marriage has been over for a long time. Melissa. Cold fury replaced the shock. They'd planned this, timed it perfectly to catch me off guard and leave me with nothing. I could hear them dressing, laughing softly as they packed up the last of Melissa's things. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the dinner I'd brought home, the flowers already wilting in my grip. When they emerged from the bedroom, Melissa pulled a small suitcase. The rest of her things were already gone, I realized. She'd been moving out gradually while I worked late. You know what's funny? Derek said, keys jingling in his hand, my spare car key, I noticed. All those nights you said you were working late? We thought you were having an affair. They laughed again, sharing a private joke at my expense. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't throw things or make threats. I simply watched as they walked out the door, taking my trust, my marriage, and my savings with them. As the door closed behind them, I looked down at the note in my trembling hand and then at my laptop on the dining table. The same laptop that held the future they knew nothing about. A strange calm settled over me. They thought they had destroyed me. They thought they had taken everything. But what they didn't know was that I had my own chapter already in motion. And in their greed and betrayal, they had only set me free. The San Francisco morning was crisp and clear as I stood outside Horizon Capital's gleaming office building. 3 weeks had passed since Melissa and Derek had walked out of my apartment and my life. 3 weeks of silence, save for a single text from Melissa asking for her mother's china, which I'd packed and left with the doorman without reply. I adjusted my hoodie, the same faded blue one Melissa always said made me look like an overgrown teenager. "Dress for the job you want," she'd lecture. Little did she know this was exactly how successful tech founders dressed. "Mr. Carter?" A young woman with a tablet approached me. "They're ready for you." The elevator ascended 40 floors, my stomach dropping with each number that lit up. I clutched my laptop like a lifeline. Everything I had, everything I was, resided on that hard drive. The boardroom was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the bay, and around a massive oak table sat 5 people in suits worth more than my monthly rent. At the head was Catherine Wu, Horizon's managing partner, whose reputation for being brilliant and ruthless preceded her. "James," she said, not bothering to stand, "show us what you've got." For the next hour, I walked them through Novamind. My voice shook at first, but as I delved into the technical details, the proprietary algorithms, the intuitive interface, the market gap we would fill, confidence replaced nervousness. This was my creation. My vision. The one thing Melissa and Derek couldn't take from me. "Your AI's predictive capabilities are impressive," Catherine said when I finished. "But why should we back you? You have no team, no business experience, and from what we can tell, no funding." I met her gaze steadily. "Because I built this from nothing while working a full-time job. Because I've lived and breathed this project for 3 years without a single day off. Because I have nothing to lose and everything to prove." Catherine's eyebrow raised slightly, the first crack in her impassive facade. "And," I added, "because if you don't, your competitors will." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Catherine smiled, a quick, sharp thing like the flash of a blade. "Bold move, threatening us," she said. "I like it." 2 hours later, I walked out with a term sheet in hand and my head spinning. $5 million in seed funding. Control of my company. A desk at their incubator space until I could afford offices of my own. I called no one to celebrate. There was no one left to call. Instead, I rented a small furnished apartment overlooking the bay, paying 6 months upfront with Horizon's initial cash transfer. I bought new clothes, a new phone with a new number, and deleted all my social media accounts. I blocked Melissa and Derek everywhere. As far as they knew, I had disappeared. Days blended into weeks, weeks into months. I hired a small team, a UX designer, 2 developers, a marketing specialist, all people who believed in Novamind as much as I did. We worked 18-hour days, subsisting on pizza and energy drinks, debugging code and refining algorithms until our eyes burned. I slept on a mattress on the floor of my otherwise empty apartment, my dreams haunted by Melissa's laugh and Derek's smirk. But each morning, I channeled that pain into productivity. Their betrayal became my fuel. "Are you sure about this timeline?" my lead developer asked one night, staring at our launch schedule. "Most startups take years to go to market. We don't have years," I replied. "We have 6 months." I didn't explain why 6 months was significant. I didn't tell them about the Instagram post I'd seen, Melissa and Derek on a Miami beach, her flashing a new ring, his caption reading, "New life, new beginnings." Wedding in 6 months. They were spending my money to fund their happiness. The irony was almost poetic. 4 months in, we had our breakthrough. The Novamind algorithm performed at 98.7% accuracy in beta tests, far exceeding industry standards. Catherine brought in more investors, and our seed round closed at $12 million. "We should celebrate," my marketing director insisted, brandishing a bottle of champagne in our cramped workspace. I allowed myself a single glass, watching my team laugh and toast our success. For a moment, I felt a pang of something like happiness. Then my phone buzzed with an email from our patent attorney. Patent approved. Novamind technology officially protected. I excused myself and stood alone on the balcony, staring out at the twinkling lights of the city. 6 months ago, I'd been betrayed by the two people I trusted most in the world. They'd taken my savings, my marriage, my friendship, thinking they'd left me with nothing. Instead, they'd freed me from a life of compromise and mediocrity. They'd pushed me onto the path I was always meant to take. My phone buzzed again, a news alert about the Miami housing market crashing. I smiled into the darkness. I didn't need to lift a finger for karma to begin her work. Novamind would launch in 2 months, just as Melissa and Derek said. I do. And then they would learn exactly what they had walked away from. They thought their betrayal was the end of my story. They had no idea it was only the beginning. I didn't go looking for information about Melissa and Derek. It found me. 5 months after they'd left me standing in my kitchen surrounded by wilting flowers and cold pasta, a notification popped up on my laptop. One of the security protocols I'd established for Novamind's launch included social media monitoring, tracking mentions, potential competitors, industry sentiment. It wasn't designed to track people. Yet there was Melissa's name, tagged in a comment on a public Instagram post that Melissa Lane 1988 wasn't your fiancé trying to start something like this. Guess someone beat him to it. Curious despite myself, I clicked through. The post was from a Miami tech meetup, discussing emerging e-commerce platforms. In the comments, Derek had apparently been boasting about his business venture. I shouldn't have looked further. I had a company to run, a product to launch. But something compelled me to type Derek's name into the search bar. His profile was public: Derek Warner, entrepreneur, visionary, living the dream in Miami. I scrolled through his feed. Photos of him and Melissa on beaches, at clubs, in a sleek apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. The kind of place that would cost at least $5,000 a month. The kind of lifestyle that would burn through their stolen savings, my stolen savings, in no time. But as I scrolled further back, I noticed a shift. Fewer luxury restaurants, more home-cooked meals. The apartment photos disappeared, replaced by generic beach shots. Their smiles seemed more forced in recent images. Then I found it, a post from 3 months ago, big announcement. Launching my own business, Warnerware Imports. High-end products at affordable prices. Link in bio. The website was amateurish, clunky navigation, stock photos, generic product descriptions. Dropshipping, just as he told me that night at the bar. But something was off about the supplier information, the shipping times, the price points. I ran the supplier through our database. Red flags everywhere: complaints, scams, non-delivery issues. Derek, the self-proclaimed financial genius, had gotten himself scammed. I closed my laptop, a strange emptiness replacing what should have been satisfaction. I hadn't wished this on them, not specifically. But I couldn't deny the grim symmetry of it all. James? My assistant knocked on my office door. Your 2 o'clock is here. I pushed thoughts of Melissa and Derek aside and focused on what mattered, Novamind. 2 weeks later, at our final investor meeting before launch, Catherine pulled me aside. There's someone claiming to have inside information about our tech, she said, her voice low. A woman. Says she knows you personally. My blood froze. Melissa? Catherine looked surprised. You know her? My ex-wife. The words still felt strange on my tongue. The divorce papers had arrived a month ago, fast-tracked by Melissa's lawyer. I'd signed without contest. What did she want? Information, mainly. How far along we are, what our valuation might be. Catherine's eyes narrowed. She seemed desperate. I nodded slowly. Did you tell her anything? Of course not. Catherine looked offended at the suggestion. But she mentioned something interesting, said her fiancé was starting a tech business too. Wanted to explore synergies. I almost laughed. Derek's dropshipping scam is hardly a tech business. So there's nothing to worry about. Nothing at all, I assured her, though my mind was racing. That night, I received an email from a former colleague still working at my old company. Thought you'd want to know, your buddy Derek reached out to us for a job. Said his startup fell through. Mentioned he'd worked with you before. Should I put in a good word? I replied with a simple, no. Do not hire him. Curious now, I did something I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. I searched for Melissa on LinkedIn. Her profile had been updated recently, seeking opportunities in PR, marketing, or administrative support. Experience in customer service and event planning. So they were both looking for jobs. The stolen money must have run out. The scam dropshipping business had failed. Their Miami dream was crumbling. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing. They had become characters in a story I was no longer reading. Until the text came from an unknown number. James, it's me. Can we talk? Things aren't, we're not. I made a mistake. Melissa. Even without her name, I'd recognize her texting style anywhere. I didn't respond. I didn't block the number either. Instead, I set my phone aside and returned to the final preparations for Novamind's launch. 3 days later, another text arrived. Please. We really need to talk. It's important. Again, I didn't respond. The third message came the next morning. Derek lost everything. The business, our apartment deposit, even the ring. He got scammed by the suppliers. We're barely making rent. I know I don't deserve your help, but I don't know who else to turn to. I stared at my phone for a long time, an idea taking shape. Not revenge, I had moved beyond that. But poetic justice? That had a certain appeal. I drafted a single response. I'm sorry to hear that. Actually, my company is hosting a networking event for startups next month. Might be some opportunities there. I'll send the details. It wasn't a lie. Novamind was indeed hosting a launch event. And there would certainly be opportunities, just not the kind Melissa and Derek were hoping for. I sent the invitation to both their emails, a satisfied smile spreading across my face. Sometimes you don't have to lift a finger for karma to do her work. But sometimes it's satisfying to give karma a little nudge in the right direction. Novamind Tower wasn't the tallest building in San Francisco, but from the rooftop garden where we'd set up for the launch party, it certainly felt like you could see forever. The bay glittered in the distance, the Golden Gate Bridge illuminated against the twilight sky. String lights and modern sculptures dotted the landscape terrace, champagne flowed freely, and the city's tech elite mingled with investors and journalists. Quite a turnout, Catherine remarked, materializing at my elbow. TechCrunch, Wired, Wall Street Journal, they all sent reporters. I nodded, scanning the crowd. Our beta users were demonstrating Novamind's capabilities on sleek displays around the terrace, drawing impressed murmurs from observers. My team, dressed in their finest, looked almost unrecognizable from the sleep-deprived coders who'd worked alongside me for months. Nervous about your speech? Catherine asked. Not exactly. My eyes kept drifting to the entrance. She followed my gaze. Expecting someone special? I checked my watch. You could say that. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from the security desk downstairs. Your guests Melissa Lane and Derek Warner have arrived. Sending them up now. Excuse me, I said to Catherine. I need to prepare. I retreated to a private corner of the terrace, adjusting my custom-tailored suit, a far cry from the hoodies and jeans Melissa had always criticized. I trimmed my beard, gotten an actual haircut, started working out with a personal trainer. The man who stared back at me from the mirrored wall looked nothing like the defeated husband who'd stood in his kitchen holding wilting flowers 7 months ago. The elevator doors opened, and there they were. Melissa stepped out first, stunning in a red dress that I recognized, one of the few expensive items she'd bought before leaving me. Her hair was different, highlighted and styled, but her eyes were the same. Those eyes widened as she took in the opulent setting, a smile of relief and anticipation spreading across her face. Derek followed, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit, his once confident stride now hesitant. They didn't notice me watching from the shadows as they accepted champagne from a passing waiter and began to circulate. I observed them for several minutes. Melissa was doing what she did best, networking, smiling, laughing at the right moments. Derek looked increasingly out of his depth, nodding too vigorously when someone spoke to him, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape route. My assistant approached them eventually, right on schedule. "Ms. Lane? Mr. Warner? The CEO would like to meet you before his speech." Their faces lit up with hope so naked it was almost painful to watch. I stepped out from my observation point and walked toward the small private lounge area where they waited, their backs to the door, unaware of who was about to enter. "I hear you're looking for opportunities," I said as I stepped into the room. They turned in unison, expressions morphing from anticipation to shock in an instant. Melissa's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "James?" Melissa whispered. "In the flesh." I gestured to the room around us. "Welcome to Novamind. My company." Derek recovered first, a forced laugh bursting from his throat. "Your company? Come on, man. You fix computers for a living. While building this on the side," I replied calmly. "That's why I was always distracted, as you put it. That's what all those late nights were for." Melissa took a step toward me, her eyes calculating even through her shock. "James, we had no idea. This is incredible." "It is, isn't it?" I smiled pleasantly. "Novamind just closed our Series A at a $50 million valuation. We're projecting to hit $100 million in revenue within 2 years. Derek's face had drained of color. "The PR department job doesn't exist," I finished for him. "At least, not for you." "James, please." Melissa's voice dropped to the soft, persuasive tone she'd always used when she wanted something. "We made a terrible mistake. We can explain." "No need," I interrupted. "I should be thanking you, actually. If you hadn't taken our savings and left, I might never have moved to Silicon Valley. Might never have had the courage to go all in on Novamind." Her expression hardened. "So this is revenge? Luring us here to humiliate us? Revenge?" I laughed genuinely. "This isn't revenge, Melissa. This is success. My success. Which I'm celebrating with people who believed in me." I looked pointedly at Derek. "Not those who betrayed me." Derek's face flushed red. "Listen, buddy, it wasn't personal. Sleeping with my wife and stealing my savings? Seems pretty personal to me." I checked my watch. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have a speech to give." "What about us?" Melissa asked, her voice small. I met her gaze directly. "You're free to stay for the networking event. Who knows? Maybe someone here will have a job for you. Entry level, of course." As I turned to leave, Derek grabbed my arm. "You can't just..." A security guard appeared instantly at my side. I hadn't called him. My team was just that good. "Is there a problem, Mr. Carter?" the guard asked. "No problem," I replied, gently removing Derek's hand from my arm. "Mr. Warner and Ms. Lane were just leaving. Actually," I added, "see them out carefully. They're old friends." As security escorted them toward the elevator, I stepped onto the small stage that had been set up at the center of the terrace. The crowd quieted, all eyes turning to me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice strong and clear, "welcome to the future." From the corner of my eye, I saw Melissa looking back at me as the elevator doors closed, her expression a mixture of regret and realization. She finally understood what she had walked away from. And I had never felt more powerful in my life. 1 year later, I stood at the podium of the Tech Innovation Summit in Tokyo, looking out at a sea of faces. My keynote on AI ethics and the future of predictive analytics had drawn a standing-room-only crowd. As I spoke, I caught sight of my reflection in the teleprompter glass, confident, focused, at peace. "Success isn't just about building something valuable," I told the audience. It's about building something that makes the world better. Something that wouldn't exist if you hadn't persevered through your darkest moments. After my talk, a line formed of people wanting to connect, ask questions, exchange business cards. I'd become accustomed to this, the attention, the respect, the constant travel. Novamind had expanded to offices in New York, London, and now Tokyo. Our user base had grown exponentially, and our valuation had tripled. Yet amid all this success, I sometimes found myself thinking about that night on the rooftop garden, when Melissa and Derek had finally understood what they'd walked away from. I hadn't seen them since. Hadn't needed to. The final scene had played out exactly as I'd envisioned. "Mr. Carter?" My assistant appeared at my elbow as the last conference attendee walked away. "Your dinner reservation is in an hour, and the Foundation called to confirm tomorrow's meeting." The Foundation was my newest venture, a nonprofit that provided coding education and tech scholarships to underprivileged youth. It had started as a simple idea: what if I could find and nurture talent in places the tech industry typically overlooked? "Thank you, Emma." I gathered my notes. "Any other messages?" She hesitated, which was unusual for her. "Actually, yes. A woman named Anna called the office." Anna, Melissa's old friend. "She said she ran into your ex-wife recently and thought you should know something." A familiar tightness formed in my chest. "What is it?" "Melissa is working at a department store in the mall. Cosmetics counter." "And Derek?" Emma checked her notes. "He's a sales associate at an electronics store. They're sharing an apartment with 2 roommates." I let this information settle, waiting for the surge of satisfaction, the vindication I'd once craved. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. "There's more," Emma said. "Anna mentioned they aren't together anymore. Apparently, the relationship fell apart not long after your company launch event." I nodded slowly. "Thank you for letting me know." Later, in my hotel room overlooking the Tokyo skyline, I poured myself a scotch and thought about the strange trajectory my life had taken. A year ago, I'd been obsessed with showing Melissa and Derek what they'd lost. Now, their lives seemed inconsequential, small stories in the much larger narrative I was writing. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "The Singapore investor is in. $20 million for the expansion. Drinks when you're back?" I smiled and texted back, "Absolutely. On a flight tomorrow." As I set my phone down, I caught a news notification. A young programmer from Detroit had won a major hackathon with an ingenious solution to urban water quality monitoring. The kind of raw talent my foundation was designed to discover. I made a note to reach out to her, to offer a mentorship, perhaps funding. This was what drove me now, finding potential where others didn't look, nurturing ideas that might otherwise wither. My phone buzzed again, an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line made me freeze. "From Melissa, please read." My thumb hovered over the delete button. Whatever she wanted to say, did it matter anymore? Curiosity won. I opened it. "James, I don't expect you to respond to this. I just needed to say that I'm sorry for what we did to you. Not because of how things turned out for us, but because it was wrong. You deserve better. I see your company in the news. The Foundation too. You're changing lives. I always knew you were smart, but I never had the vision to see what you could become. I'm starting over. Community college. A small apartment. It's humbling, but it's honest. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you never do. Melissa." I stared at the screen for a long time, then closed the email without replying. Perhaps someday I would respond. Perhaps not. The anger that had once consumed me had burned away, leaving not ashes but fertile ground where something new had grown. Standing at the window, looking out at the lights of Tokyo, I realized a profound truth: the best revenge wasn't showing them what they had lost. It was becoming someone who no longer needed revenge at all. They had taken my savings, my marriage, my friendship, but in doing so, they had set me free. Free to discover my potential, free to build something meaningful, free to become someone I never could have been with them in my life. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. "Thank you," I whispered to the ghosts of my past. "For everything." Then I turned away from the view, opened my laptop, and began working on my next big idea. The future was waiting, and I had so much more to build.